license and registration, he can sense your aggravation.
On the head of the fallen angel.
When the world is muttering under the floorboards, stomp even louder.
Untime.
Let them know you are alive today.
Or unhum.
Did you know that your hands came with a ripple effect?
Whisper tones unraveling like silk.
Blood, sweat, and tears win by any means poetry.
Sway, look at me. Is a piece of the pie too good for me?
Some may call it rock the mic. We call it poetry.
Teach them. Teach them to read, write, count, to think, pray, to love, to trust their own instincts. Teach them to make choices and decisions, looking at outcomes at least 3 levels down the road. Teach them to stand up, to speak up for themselves and each other when they see doubt, fear, or pain. Teach them to trust their own instincts. Teach them to know the difference between facts and truth, that lies often lay behind smiles and inside twisted minds, that filth may reside inside shiny cars, that gold chains, rings, and bling-filled things can blind the clearest sight. Teach them to trust their own instincts. Teach them that midnight realities are seldom real, that thieves only steal things of value, that regret, like death, is forever, that life has no rehearsals, that true love has no equal. Teach them that despite arguments or fights, no matter who's wrong or right, that nothing has more value than a daughter or son, that there's no victory to be won in prisons or cemeteries. Teach them to read, to write, to count, to think, to pray, to love, to trust their own instincts. Well, hello, and welcome back to Sojourn with Words, right here on CTV. I'm your host, Sistah Joy, and we are very excited today. We're always excited on Sojourn with Words because we have something to be excited about, or should I say someone. Today's guest is Cathy Hailey. And oh my goodness, this is someone who has been doing such great work, so many great things in the literary world. But let's start with an official introduction. But I want to say hi first to Cathy. Cathy, welcome to Sojourn with Words.
Hello, Sistah Joy. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you for making yourself available. So, Sojourn with Words family, Cathy Hailey teaches in Johns Hopkins University's Master of Arts in Teaching Writing program, and previously taught high school English and creative writing in Prince William County, Virginia. So for the Poetry Society of Virginia, Cathy serves as Northern Region Vice President, Student Contest Chair, and Young Poets in the Community Coordinator. So you see, she is based in Virginia. We brought her over to Prince George's County. So let's hear a little bit more about Cathy here. For Prince William Poet Laureate Circle, Cathy organizes the In the Company of Laureates, a gathering of poets laureate in Prince William County. She serves as director of the Jacqueline Potter Young Writers Competition for the WordWorks, which is a nonprofit literary organization and press founded in 1974 It's actually based in Washington, D.C. Cathy's chapbook, I'd Rather Be a Hyacinth, was published by Finishing Line Press. Let's see now. Recent poetry journal publications include the Poetry Society of Virginia Centennial Anthology, Texas Poetry Assignment, WWPH Writes, Green Mountain Writers Poetry and Performance, and Circling with Poets Laureate. So you see, we have quite a literary luminary with us today. Cathy, we are just so honored to have you with us. And the work that you do makes such a difference in the community of poets, but in the community community at large, because you create opportunities for the community to connect with poetry. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That's an important part of how I like to see the world now that I've retired from full-time teaching.
Right, right. And I understand that you continue to have a focus on students. Tell me, why is that important to you?
Well, I think I was destined to be a teacher since the time I was playing in the basement. I was always the teacher in my, home school when I was a little girl. And so it's just, something that's in the blood after a while. I taught in Prince William County for 40 years.
40 years.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
It doesn't leave you just because you left the full-time practice.
Correct. Well, I certainly understand that. And I understand that you have a focus on integrating poetry with other arts media. How does that work? And give us some examples of how you've done that.
Okay. I've done that, but I've also taught that as part of my teaching in Prince William County, as well as, afterward in different ways in workshops. But I invented a course for the Center for the Fine and Performing Arts in Prince William County that was called Writing and the Arts. And it was part ekphrastic writing, where you look at other arts and allow it to inspire a poem or other writings in other genres. But I also like to offer students an opportunity to integrate writing and art in other ways, not necessarily by one inspiring the other. So, collages that incorporate words and images, photography, and haiku, for example. That's something I've been practicing more recently, is trying to make haiga from haiku and photography.
Now tell us that word that you just used, haiga.
Haiga, yeah, Haiga. It's another, Japanese form, usually with, brush painting. You've seen a lot of haiku that's paired with a ink brush painting. But these days, along with everything else, people are branching out and using all kinds of art media to combine with haiku. So one haiku will appear on the page along with an image. For me, a lot of those are photography, although I'd like to branch out and do a little bit more painting.
Okay. Now, I had the privilege of experiencing some of your arts media or genre collaboration where you had a dancer to interpret a poem. Talk about that.
I did in the Company of Laureates. I was thrilled to find 2 dancers from Woodbridge High School who were volunteering to select poems from Poet Laureate poetry that was submitted. And so these 2 dance students were able to interpret from the poetry and choreograph a dance and then perform it on Saturday and Sunday. It's just been a week since we saw you in addition, Sistah Joy, and I appreciate your attendance both days in the Company of Laureates. That was wonderful. And I also have poetry that's inspired by dance. So the other way around for me in my chapbook. And another thing I like to do with the arts is to host a Zoom called Where Art Meets the Line, where I encourage those poets who do make both visual arts and poetry and connect them in some ways to come on and talk about that integration. but they can also do other arts. So song or dance would also be appropriate, although most of my guests have focused on visual arts and poetry.
Okay, okay. Well, certainly the dancers were extraordinary. I was just so very moved to see that interpretation. And as you said, very often we see collaborations with the visual art and poetry, but it was just such a splendid treat to see that, a different genre. So thank you for that. And for mentioning the opportunities that sometimes poets and the community may not expect. So we always like to broaden person's experience of the arts. And of course, we're actually recording this, excuse me, today. We're during National Arts and Humanities Month. So we're all about bringing together as many different art forms as possible. So that was something that was so very appropriate during that recent celebration and gathering of Poets Laureate. Now,
Thank you.
oh, absolutely. How is it that, well, you talk about the integration of poetry and other media, but talk about the focus of laureates in the community with each other. How important is that, and what types of opportunities exist, or would you like to see exist with regard to Poets Laureate coming together to provide opportunities, literary and otherwise, for the community?
My daughter was crowned Poet Laureate along with Robert Scott, a teacher in Prince William County. She was still a student at VCU at the time. And following that tenure, June Forte thought, these poets laureate of different regions don't really know each other. They have their communities, but they're not crossing communities. They're not given opportunities to meet each other. And so I credit June Forte with the idea. But since that time, I've been involved with Alice Mergler in coordinating our event in the Company of Laureates. I don't think there are that many events like it where the most important focus is on allowing and encouraging community amongst laureates, but also, guests in the community watching as well. I also was involved in a laureate gathering at the Virginia Museum of Fine Arts in May, because we had a celebration of the Poetry Society of Virginia's centennial. So that was a wonderful opportunity, and we were able to meet the new Poet Laureate of Virginia, Margaret Daramola, and also the first Poet Laureate, Youth Poet Laureate, Kashfi Rahmani. So that was a wonderful experience. But other than those events, I haven't really focused on only laureates, but I have a special love for this program and a connection that's, by blood in a sense. My daughter Alexandra spent the 2 years, 2014 to 2016, as Poet Laureate of Prince William County. But when she was 26, we lost her in a car accident. And so my connection with the Laureate program is also a labor of love and an effort to keep her alive and her words alive, since she was also a poet.
Well, thank you for sharing. Oh, my goodness, such a loss at an early age. The legacy that continues through your gathering of laureates is something that is so very meaningful to many of us in the laureate circle. I know I had not heard of such an experience beyond yours, and I'm sure there are other opportunities. But when the gathering of Poets Laureate by your organization, I think there were poets from, well, you tell us, how far ranging were the poets? And I understand it's a state Poets Laureate, county, and city.
Yes. So this time, I guess the farthest distance might have been Delaware, West Virginia, and Pennsylvania, those 3 states. Sometimes we have North Carolina included. This year we weren't able to get anybody from there, but I've reached out farther than that. It's I think South Carolina might have been the farthest that we had in the past. And sometimes I've reached out beyond that. The funding to support poets is not there yet. We do get, each time we've been working toward a grant from the Virginia Commission for the Arts, and we've been successful in giving honoraria to poets laureate who do workshops, but we haven't been able to fund others that aren't doing workshops. So often I offer the workshops to the people who are the farthest away so that they have some balance in their expenses.
Well, it's a wonderful opportunity. And again, this means of bringing poets together, poets laureate together is absolutely so very crucial, because as you said, we're all doing the same work and putting our own spin on it, but it's a matter of being able to glean from one another some of the best practices and the stories and experiences that have served our communities best. And that's what I think that's the true value of these gatherings coming together, not to mention the wonderful books that we're introduced to by the Poets Laureate. That is always such a find. So I'm enjoying reading some that I picked up this time as well. Now, finally,
I agree. The books are wonderful.
Yes. Now, time is getting away, but I do want to speak about your style of poetry before we hear some of your poetry. When you talk about poetry as refuge and witness, but you also talk about free verse versus form. Give us a few nuggets that will introduce us to the poetry that you're about to share.
Okay. It's been a difficult time since 2018 when my daughter was lost, in 2019 retiring, and then the pandemic. So I feel like many of us were looking for ways to take refuge. And I think nature and the arts have been, and poetry itself have been ways that I've taken refuge. And also as witness, I like to keep people alive in my poetry, celebrate people who are still alive, people I love, and also witness, like in the past and in current events, things that are very troubling, where poetry is the only place I can turn to try to make sense of the world, past, present, and future.
Absolutely.
And just a quick on form, I tend to be a little wordy. As of previously, I was a nonfiction writer more so, and so that transition from prose to poetry sometimes makes conciseness a challenge. And I've found that form is a way to help me to remain concise, because I have to work out the puzzle.
Well, I'll have to embrace that guide, because those of us who love words, we are truly challenged by the fact that poetry is a concise form of expression. And when we find that we're not quite writing an epic, but we're legions from haiku. So let's now transition and hear some wonderful poetry by our today's guest poet, Cathy Hailey from Virginia. She has been doing wonderful works for the community, in the community, educating young poets and sharing opportunities for poets laureates. So she's run the gamut from the novice, the new voice in, and those who have really done the labor and have something to give back. Cathy, thank you so much for being here. We're ready to hear some of your poetry.
Thank you. I'll start with some poems from my chapbook. I'd Rather Be a Hyacinth is the title, and it's a chapbook of haiku sonnets. This is an unusual form that many don't know, but it's a marriage of East and West, of haiku and Shakespearean sonnet. So I'll read two at a time since they're very short. The first one is an acrostic poem based on a ballet from the Moscow Festival Ballets. They're episodic ballets. So this one is Falling Rose, after the Rose Adagio from Act 1 of Sleeping Beauty. Crowned with twisted braids, sequined glimmer tulle tutus, spinning silver threads, weave between tall boots. Muscles pulse with each sauté, rangeté, sisson. Vests of gold lame, feathered cavalier hats donned, partnering begins. Passing pink tutus, taking turns with timely spins, fouettes like corkscrews. Though each suitor gifts a rose, beauty falls into repose. And the second one is a celebration of my mom, who is 92, hopefully soon to be 93 in November. And it's titled Romance Remembered. Tea kettle whistles, inviting afternoon tea. Mom reminisces. Youth in New Jersey, single life in Manhattan, Greek circle dancing, wedding in satin, jitterbug swing enhancing island honeymoon, romance for hours, Alexa playing her tunes, crooning their amours. She reminds me to write all before she cannot recall. I whispered that AI name because I've read before and had her pop in to the conversation. So I wanted to avoid that. So the poems are, each stanza is a haiku, or you can think of the last one as a tanka, including the couplet at the end. But then you have a poem with tercets following a Shakespearean sonnet rhyme scheme, which is based on quatrains. So it's counterintuitive, but it's a fun puzzle to practice. And then I'm going to read two poems again. These two show my refuge in nature, but they also show my inspiration in making the collage that is the cover of my book, and also pay homage to my daughter. So the first one is called Flying High. Yellow pigments fade as our rose opens wider, till petals cascade. Rainstorm denied her a lifeline earned and deserved. Gerbera daisies, magenta preserved, stand tall like charmed ladies in crowds of proud leaves. How does God decide which flower stays, which recedes? Mother Nature's chide? Darwin's law does not apply. She lived as a butterfly. And then the final poem, which brings the title of the book in. It's titled In Life, but the title is in one of the lines. In life, hyacinth, purple, baby blooms adding stress, weight, instinct maternal. Tulips variegate, orange yellow, dancing coy above troops of green. Singular pride, joy, even with no breeze. In life, I'd rather be a hyacinth, embrace the role of mother, live the labyrinth, loved by a brood of florets, very center of orbits. So those are the poems from the chapbook, all haiku sonnets. And then I thought I'd read a longer poem, which I read it in the Company of Laureates, also in tribute to my daughter, called The River. And it's a poem in conversation with a poem she wrote and presented during her time as poet laureate. And two lines from this poem are taken from Thomas Transtromer's The Half-Finished Heaven. They're near the end. The River. At the yellow house on West 29th, In the year she read Tomas Tranströmer, Sweden's 2011 Nobel laureate, the college girl discovered the spring on her running trail along the James Buttermilk Trail near Riverside Drive, where she carried glass jugs in her backpack to collect cool, clear water from Buttermilk Spring, a historic site near Canoe Run Park and Canal Lock ruins, where workers once stored cans of dairy, milk, butter, buttermilk to deliver throughout Richmond. Images as fresh as spring water populated Tranströmer's poems. Images as fresh as fish pulled from the James, as fresh as the great blue heron standing statuesque, sometimes in a twisted yoga pose on shore, until the moment of flight, soaring low over mirrored water, darting up to tree canopy. River creatures comforted the college girl, reminding her of home beside a reservoir, the dammed up Occoquan River. Tranströmer's poems consoled her at a time when a concussion challenged intellect but sparked creativity, a painting frenzy until the walls of the yellow house were covered in art. I never joined her on this river run, but today I trace her steps, imagine the rush of spring water, the sound of life crashing out from a natural tap, taste the refreshing snap of her spirit as I swallow. Once, Tranströmer found his way into the college girl's poem, but she revised him away. Each time I read the new version, I missed him there. Perhaps it was the reversal, a daughter introducing her mother teacher to a new poet. I wanted to honor him, to remember him inside a poem, to recall what she'd given me, the half-finished heaven. So I wrote my own poem, beginning at the same yellow house where she lived only 1 year. Now, almost 5 years have passed since she joined Tranströmer, where even the ghosts take a drink, where water glitters between the trees, and I see them together through the window of the river.
Beautiful. Oh my goodness. Thank you so very much. Well, Cathy Hailey has been our guest here today on Sojourn with Words, sharing exquisite poetry and, of course, sharing her story of involvement in the arts and literary community in particular. But Cathy, thank you for being a wonderful guest here on Sojourn with Words. I love your poetry. It has an elegance that is just transported.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely. And Cathy, can you tell our guests how they can be in touch with you, email, or if there's a website, or how would you prefer they contact you?
Yes. I have a website, cathyhailey.com. It's not as well kept up as I'd like it to be, but my email is HAILEYC as in Cathy, P as in Peterson, @gmail.com.
Okay. So we definitely want to encourage our viewers to be in touch with Cathy if you like what you heard, or if you just have some questions about what's available to you if you happen to be in her neck of the woods. So Cathy, thank you so much for being with us. And I look forward to staying in touch with you for sure, and look forward to seeing how we might collaborate in the future.
It's been a pleasure.
Absolutely. Take care. Be well.
Thank you so much.
Okay, well, that closes out today's Sojourn with Words. Make sure that, as you know, if you have something in your spirit or in your mind that you'd like to share, pick up that pen and keep writing.